point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 629th edition of Energy Week with Nancy Wolf and me.
Hi there.
I'm George Harvey. I've been around on this show since its inception, and I've actually produced all 629 shows and co-hosted or hosted all but one of them. There was one I was absent from.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't know how did the show happen without you here?
Did you ever meet Roland Boyden? Roland was the guy who did the work around the studio. Very creative, really good mind, interested in the show. And I asked him, Roland, I'm going to be gone next week. How would you like to anchor this show? He said, sure. So that's what he did. Okay. We are recording this on the 19th of June. Juneteenth.
Yes, Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, which was not, it commemorates the day that the slaves were emancipated.
Yeah, when people found out.
When people found out
that they were free.
Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
Found out they were free.
But the Indians were still not human beings at that point.
Right.
It took another 14 years for that to happen. Nevertheless, it's one of the days that I think is important. Did you know that I have black ancestors? No. I don't look like it. I don't think I look white. I think I look pink. But I do have, my father's mother's mother was a little dark. And the story in the family was that she was American Indian. And my nieces got DNA work done.
Oh, I see.
And there was American Indian in the DNA, but there was also Black African. So when I heard that, I thought that was extremely cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It means that I'd be disowned by a whole set of people who I don't like.
Sounds
okay.
Good.
We're going to start this show. This show is from my blog, geoharvey.com. You can get to it by the usual routes, including going down that way or over that way to find a tiny URL site called Energy Week 629. And if you go to either of those places, you can get through the calendar or just at Energy Week 629, just go to it and you can find the material that we're talking about. Before we start, excuse me, I want to say there was something that I found in the news today, which is not in the show, partly because it wouldn't have gone into the show this week because there was so much that happened today. It just wouldn't have made it. But it's not going to be in the show next week either because there was so much today. And if I had to pick something, if I had to go to 4 items for the day and pick something that was not included so far, it wouldn't be this. But I do want to mention it because I think it is illustrative of something. And that is Chris Wright, who is the Energy Secretary, told a Senate panel that the United States will have 3 small modular reactors running by the 4th of July, 2026. Your comment?
No.
No.
No. No. They're not going to be able to, that's not possible.
It's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
It's utter nonsense. Why did he say that?
He's thinking about maybe building a factory?
No, I think he's thinking about making somebody pleased for the next week or two.
Yes, that would be it, yeah.
the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has approved 2 designs by NuScale, both by NuScale, and these reactors would go onto federal lands, so it would be kind of hard to prevent it from happening because of local opposition. But the factory has to be built. Then the reactors have to be built and moved into place and set up and hooked up and made to run. But before they can run, they have to be tested. I don't think it's going to happen. The United States has never got a reactor going once in less than 2 years. And that was a reactor that you've never heard of, probably. So anyway, we're starting on Thursday, June 12th, and we have this picture of a battery system and an article from Environment America.
Yeah, the headline here is U.S. adds record amount of battery energy storage in first 3 months of 2025.
The United States added a record 1,602 megawatts of battery storage capacity in the first quarter of 2025, equivalent to the capacity of a large coal-fired power plant. I'm going to say a huge coal-fired power plant. The American Clean Power Association said the U.S. had 30 gigawatts of battery storage at the end of March. I tried checking this story and the numbers don't add up. So you got it the way I found it, but I don't know that it's 100% true. It is true. Something happened. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Let's go on.
Yeah.
Our next item, there's a picture of the Mississippi River, and that pair of barges pushed by a tugboat is not relevant to this story. This is from ABC News. I just wanted a good picture of a river. So.
Yeah, well, so the headline here is transport of mercury through rivers has risen threefold since Industrial Revolution. Study finds.
Such industries as coal burning, mining, and manufacturing increase mercury pollution and change the way it moves through rivers, causing a threefold rise in mercury concentrations around the world since 1850s, a paper in the journal Science shows. There once was a commercial fishing business in Lake Champlain, and it stopped working. It was a business of local boats taking fishermen out to the middle of the lake so they could fish. And the thing that killed that was that there was too much mercury in the fish. That was over 100 years ago. And things have not got better. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. The story is if you catch a record-sized trout or salmon or whatever, of those kinds of fish in Lake Champlain, don't eat it because it's going to be toxic. And that's not a joke. That's unfortunately true. And there's no known practical way to get that mercury out of the water. And where did the mercury come from? Coal-burning power plants. Not in Vermont. It came from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, places like that, Illinois. So, there it is. Okay. We have a highway near Banff.
Yes.
And an article from Clean Technica.
The headline here is Alberta's renewable energy sabotage. Time for federal intervention.
Alberta's latest assault on renewable energy investors is clear as it is cynical. Alberta's new reclamation rules for wind and solar projects are exorbitant, requiring project developers to post 30% of the total anticipated decommissioning costs at project inception. So they have to post this 25 or 30 years before it's going to be used. I wonder if they thought about doing that for oil wells.
Yeah, or any project.
Coal mines.
Yeah.
I don't know. Coal mines have value when you close them if you use them properly. You can use them for storing water.
Right. Okay.
And you have to have a storage scheme that does not depend upon the water being useful for drinking.
Right.
Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, let's go on.
We're up to Friday, June 13th, and we have an item from ABC News.
So the headline here is oil prices surge after Israel's strike on Iran.
Okay, oil prices surged and Asian shares were lower after Israel struck Iranian nuclear and military targets as the attack raised the risk of war between them, that is to say, between Israel and Iran. U.S. benchmark crude oil rose by $3.93 or 5.8% to $71.97 per barrel. International standard Brent crude was up by $3.82 to $73.18 per barrel.
I have two words.
Oh, no.
War machine.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Merry Christmas. No, they ain't Merry Christmas. I got two words, and they ain't Merry Christmas. Yeah, they're. I don't know what to do say about this. I note that Tulsi Gabbard, who is the Secretary of Intelligence, is that what it is? I think so. Said months ago that the United States intelligence people had no idea that the Iranians were building a nuclear bomb. And she, not she, but somebody in that department informed somebody in the press very recently, like yesterday, that there was no change in that. And apparently Tulsi Gabbard is not in favor with the Trump administration anymore.
I see.
You see?
I see.
Okay. All right. Let's go on. I always like pump jacks. That picture is a picture of a pump jack, which is also called a nodding donkey.
Oh, I see.
Okay. We have an opening of a solar farm in South America from the government of Chile, and this is from Renews.
Yeah. So the headline here is UK to invest £500 million in hydrogen networks.
All right, they're not really, yes, that's right, I'm sorry. The UK government confirmed over £500 million in funding for new hydrogen infrastructure, with one aim being to create thousands of skilled clean energy jobs. The announcement is part of a plan for change strategy, that is to say, plan for change strategy, to make Britain a clean energy superpower and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Everybody, well, not everybody, but the UK and Germany and Australia and I think certainly China, but China doesn't count because they're actually doing it. Possibly Canada. They talk about being a clean energy superpower. And this kind of strikes me as being a little odd to think about, because there isn't any place on Earth that you can't make lots of clean energy.
And isn't that whole superpower, climate change, aren't they, those kind of things kind of go against each other in some senses?
Superpower, climate change.
Because a superpower is going to have the ability to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, in the past they have always. I think that saying that the UK would be a clean energy superpower doesn't mean it's going to have clean energy bombs it can drop on anybody. But
yeah, it's true.
okay, should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go on.
We have a picture, and this picture, I have some comments about this. This is the Roscoe Wind Farm in West Texas, and I have that story that I tell about the Roscoe Wind Farm, and a picture like this was one that made me decide I was going to call people around the Roscoe Wind Farm and ask them how they felt about living in a wind farm.
Yeah.
And they all seemed to think it was a great place to live. And you can see here in this picture, there's, I don't know how many wind turbines you can see in that picture, but there's got to be dozens of them. And this article is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so the headline here is Texans love their wind power, even if Trump doesn't.
In Texas, a variety of new power generation assets are still growing, with plans for new natural gas and potentially new nuclear and geothermal facilities. Yet wind and solar projects constitute most of the new power plants recently built in Texas, and that capacity is expected to keep growing. So, what do you think?
I think this is the way. This is the way. This is the way. Yeah.
Yeah. For anybody who wants to know, by the way, I called people around the Roscoe Wind Farm, and what I did was I looked at public places, the mayor's office, the high school, the library, and I just call and get a person who was answering the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is not a high-level person usually. And I'd ask, how do you feel about living in a wind farm? And the story that I always tell is about a woman who worked for the mayor. She said, well, why don't you call back or why don't I take your number and the mayor will call you when he gets back from lunch? And I said, I don't want to talk to the mayor. The mayor has a political idea that, is going to project something. I want to talk with somebody who doesn't have any political axe to grind. And I kind of think that you might be qualified. And so I'd like to ask you, how does it feel to live in a wind farm? And she said, oh, I never thought about the fact that I live in a wind farm. I suppose I do. Well, we like it. And there was that. There are 627 wind turbines in that wind farm. And obviously, you're only seeing a tiny part of the wind turbines, but they're all across the horizon there. And if you look at that wind farm from space, you can see schools with playgrounds and completely surrounded by wind turbines. And you can see a lot of pump jacks, nodding donkeys, many of which have fallen apart, some of which have the soil around them just black. I'm talking about really black because they've had oil spills. And, does anybody clean that stuff up?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, we have a road in California. We're up to Saturday, June 14th. This is from ABC News.
Yeah, headline here is Trump signs measure blocking California's ban on new sales of gas-powered cars.
Well, California and the federal government signed an agreement in which California could put together its own rules, because California is huge in terms of its gross domestic product. And there's no particular reason why the car companies shouldn't have a dual standard. And also, California had a bunch of other states that wanted to follow its standards. So there's about 10 states, 8 states, whatever, that have this California ban scheduled. Vermont is not one of them, although Vermont generally does go with California. Donald Trump, during his first term in office, wanted to end that dual thing. The car companies didn't support him on that. I don't think they support this. But, you know, maybe they saw a preview of his parade or something. Do you have anything on this?
Just that it's so much, I'm going to stop you from stopping you from stopping you. We're stopping from stopping from stopping.
Yes.
It's.
Are you going to stop me from stopping you?
No.
Then I can stop you.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, that was a road in California. And here we have a picture of a fish that is unabashedly showing off.
Definitely. This is from the BBC.
Yeah.
And the headline here is "A Glimmer of Hope for Marine Life at the UN Ocean Conference."
Nearly 200 countries came together in Nice. Looks like it says nice, but it's Nice.
It's nice.
To discuss how to tackle the most pressing issues facing the oceans. The High Seas Treaty must be ratified by 60 countries to bring it into force. 50 countries have already ratified it, but dozens more have promised to ratify it by the end of the year. And this treaty, well, what do you have to say about it?
I think it's really great and really cool, and hopefully it gets ratified.
Hopefully it gets ratified. There's a lot in this, and you know, there's things going on with fisheries, there's things going on with waste, there's things going on with plastics,
Yes.
pollution. I don't know whether marine fuel is part of this. I suspect that it is, but I just don't know. I read this, but I don't remember. If we go on, I can escape.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, here's a picture of the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah.
and beyond it is New York City. This is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, the headline here is "Abandoning the Market."
And I have a disclosure to make,
Yeah.
which is that I wrote this. Recently, I came across an article on a paper published in by the International Energy Agency entitled, quote, "Global energy investments set to rise to 3.3 trillion in 2025 amid economic uncertainty and energy security concerns." You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of a piece of music that a friend of mine claimed had the longest title of any piece of music ever written. And he said it was written by Hoagy Carmichael. I looked this up. There is a longer title, and Hoagy Carmichael's title was different from the one my friend gave. But the title of the music that my friend gave was, I'm a cranky old Yank in a clanky old tank on the streets of Yokohama with my Honolulu mama singing those Beto, Beto, Hirohito, oh, down on your knees, oh, Hirohito blues. Anyway, this thing has a long title, which I will follow with, "We have a problem," which is that we have abandoned a market nearly as big as a new car market. And what I meant by that was the global energy market is set to be $3.3 trillion in 2025. That is the production of energy. It does not include electric vehicles. The car market globally is 4.4 trillion. So it's 4.4 versus 3.3. And in the United States, by putting tariffs on everybody,
Yes.
by being an unreliable trade partner, which I think very clearly we have been, and by basically saying that climate change is a fraud and we are not interested in clean energy, which is our official position right now, we've just blocked ourselves out of that market.
Completely.
So we are helping China, which has got more than half of that $3.3 trillion market.
Yep.
And what do we get out of that?
Not money. Not money.
Antipathy. We get antipathy.
Yes.
We're not working the way everybody else is. We're not in the market. And
We think we're special, and that specialness is important.
we're going to pay for this.
Yes, yep.
And it's very sad for people who, have children and eat, work for a living,
Exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're up to Sunday, June 15th.
Yeah.
And we have a picture of a geothermal system and an item from Clean Technica.
So the headline here is Geothermal Energy has a new 163 gigawatt message for fossil fuels.
When I read that, I thought it was 163 gigawatts in the US or worldwide, but I was wrong in both cases. Coal, oil, and gas production were all tapped for priority status under the National Energy Emergency declaration by the White House. This is why we're not in the market worldwide, because we've got an imaginary emergency.
For oil.
For oil. But geothermal energy was also included. And that industry is ready. New Mexico, for example, is getting 163 gigawatts of it. One state, 163 gigawatts. One state, New Mexico. Okay, I'll admit, New Mexico is bigger than New England.
That's true.
But 163 gigawatts, this is electricity, that exceeds the amount of electricity that we get from nuclear power today. And our nuclear electricity is down from what it was at its peak, but this exceeds the peak by a lot. It's 50% above the peak for nuclear power, and that's just one state as opposed to the whole country. And geothermal power is expensive, but it's not as expensive as nuclear.
Yeah.
And, it is...
Got some hot rocks.
Yeah, and this is something that is really, really interesting. If you think about nuclear power, people who want nuclear power say it's baseload, which I think is utter nonsense. Solar with batteries, wind power with batteries, either of those backed up by batteries sufficient to do the job. In either case, solar or wind plus batteries, either is more reliable than nuclear.
Yeah, because you don't have a nuclear explosion.
There are a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about where you're getting fuel. The sun, I think we can pretty much count on the fact that it's going to rise tomorrow. The wind, the wind isn't always blowing, but it's almost always blowing. And when you've got the wind down to zero in one place, you've got the next wind farm over, it's producing electricity. Wind farms, by the way, I saw a thing that said wind farms produce electricity 98% of the time.
Yeah.
Not 100% of their nameplate power, but 98% of the time. And when they're not, their nameplate power, typically they achieve, 25% of the time or something like that. Nuclear power, it gets shut down. It has to get shut down for refueling. Nuclear power has got other things going on. I watched Wolf Creek, I think it was, the nuclear power plant was basically not working for over a year and a half. And then they shut it down permanently because it was a mess, and it was because of floods. I forget which river Wolf Creek is on, but it's in Nebraska, I think.
It's like there's all this investment in building these things as industrial sites, but then once they're done, they just, mess all over the land. And, it's like, it's that whole thing of leave something better than you left.
One of the things that bothers me about nuclear, and I keep saying this, I have never heard a nuclear engineer or anybody involved in the nuclear industry respond to this except one person who said, that never happened. Okay, the point that I made was nuclear reactor designs always are subject to safety analysis before they're built.
Yeah.
And he said, no, they're not. They don't do that. Okay, so they build them without safety analysis? That doesn't make any sense at all. But the safety analysis tells you the likelihood that a nuclear plant will melt down. And in the 20 reactor years that we've got in our worldwide nuclear fleet, it's probably a little over 20,000 now. There should have been one meltdown, according to their safety analysis. 2 possible. But I can name 11, and that's just the ones I can name. Who knows what was going on in the Soviet Union?
Indeed.
We've had 3 in the United States. Most people don't know that. We had 3 Mile Island, we had Fermi 1, and we had Simi Valley, which I count because it was actually putting electricity onto the grid for sale. You know about that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean also with the weapons, you had spills, you had accidents, you had all those kinds of things.
Kishtim. Do you know Kishtim? Kishtim was a nuclear fuel processing area which blew up. And the Americans discovered that this had happened because all of a sudden the Soviet Union was no longer putting a bunch of villages on its maps. And we knew something weird had happened because there was this increase in nuclear stuff going on. And, it's just, let me get out of this. Unless you have more to say.
Yes, let's go.
I like this picture. This is a nice picture.
Yeah.
This is a community in Nepal and an article from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so the headline here is how a Himalayan nation is a global EV leader.
Now, how in the world can you expect a country that has towns like that?
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I love it.
But imagine driving a car in a town like that.
It looks challenging.
It does, doesn't it?
Looks a little bit challenging to me.
Nepal, a small nation of 30 million, better known around the world for its mountains, including Mount Everest, and trekking tourism. My brother spent some time in Nepal, is quietly setting an impressive benchmark in the EV transition. In recent months, about 70% of all new passenger vehicles sold in Nepal were electric. And that doesn't put it as the global leader, because in Norway, upwards of 90% are electric, but
it's a global.
It is a global leader. Yeah, it's one of a very few that are in that range. Nepal. How do you make money in a place like that?
Well,
I know how
Everest, I would. One thing.
I would write poetry.
Well, there's a lot of interesting connections I've found between people very interested in Nepal and Boulder. Colorado. There's a lot of Nepalese shops.
In
There's-
Boulder, Colorado?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
There's like this connection, Tibet connection. There's a whole interesting
I
thing.
remember about that. It's because of, and there are Tibetan communities in various parts of the United States. There
Yeah.
are people who escaped Tibet when China took over. I think it was in the late 1940s, but yeah.
I mean, it makes it makes a lot of sense to me. You have mountain culture.
Yes, absolutely.
So
they wanted to feel at home, and they were not going to feel at home on the prairie. No,
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen.
no.
Although I remember reading an article many years ago about holidays spent by Europeans, specifically among two groups. The people who lived in the Netherlands would go to Switzerland to see the mountains. Where did the Swiss go? To the Netherlands to see the horizon.
Oh.
And of course, the Swiss got not only to see the horizon, they would see acres and acres of tulips in bloom. Okay, we are getting short of time, I'm afraid.
Yes.
And we have an item from the BBC and Raja Ampat,
Yeah. So,
which is the place this article's about.
yeah. And the headline here is Race to Mine Metals for EV Batteries Threatens Marine Paradise.
When I saw this headline, I thought it was about nodules coming off the floor of the ocean, but that isn't it. This is onshore mining. Stark images taken from a drone by environmental campaigners and shared with the BBC, and I'm sorry to say I couldn't put them up because they are copyrighted. But if you go to the article, you can find them. Appear to show how nickel mining has stripped forests and polluted waters in one of the most biodiverse marine habitats on Earth. The Raja Ampat Archipelago is called the Amazon of the Seas. And the pictures show islands bigger than the ones in this photograph. Basically stripped bare and surrounded by polluted water. This is polluted seawater. It isn't some pond that they've polluted. And, we need nickel for batteries.
Yeah.
We need other things, but we've got to do better than this. And the fact is, we've got batteries that are unlike anything that this stuff is going to be used in. We've got batteries that don't use nickels.
Exactly. We don't
Yeah.
have to do this.
We don't have to do this, that's right. Now, one thing, and I'm going to say this, and everybody's probably going to throw their shoes at me. One problem that we've got is we've got too many cars. We are just too reliant on automobiles. We, in my opinion, should be producing far fewer cars than we do. On the other hand, the utility scale batteries that we could use include iron oxide batteries. There's no nickel, there's no what are the other, cobalt? Nothing like that in those batteries. It's just iron and air. They rust. And then you throw electricity at them and they unrest. Yes, that's what happens. We're up to Monday, June 16th.
Yeah.
Offshore wind farm. This is from Renews.
Yeah. So the headline here is Global Offshore Wind Capacity up 14% to 85 gigawatts.
Global operational offshore wind capacity grew by 14% in the last 12 months to 85 gigawatts. The Energy Pulse Insights Offshore Wind from Renewable UK shows. It says the capacity added in the last year generates enough electricity to meet annual needs of over 11 million UK homes. Now, one minor problem with that is they're talking about global capacity increase and that increase meeting the needs of 11 million UK homes. UK homes use a lot of electricity compared to many homes. So if you took annual needs of just worldwide homes, I think you'd have more than 11 million.
Right, yeah. Would that be more than Americans spend on electricity?
No,
No.
no. You know, Americans use huge amounts of electricity and huge amounts of power. We use electricity for things we don't need.
Yes.
And I mean, I've known people who turn the TV on and walk away. And 3 hours later, when they come back, they want the TV on.
You know, and they have those lights in Europe where you press the button and then you have to press the button every time you want to use it. And it just is, it will stop. Like it won't stay on the whole time. Like you don't need to have the light. You don't need to have like when you're a hall light on. Like,
Yeah. I'll tell you though, I went to Brown and Roberts and I bought a light bulb, regular Edison socket light bulb, and I put it in my bathroom, and I just turn it on in the evening and leave it on all night. So if I get up, I can walk in. It's a regular night light. How much electricity does it use? You want to guess? You don't want to guess.
No.
Well, the old night lights of this type would use 5 watts, which is not much. But this uses 0.6 watts, which means you can run this thing for a year for $1 worth of electricity. If it's on 24 hours a day, and I turn it off because I can't stand using electricity during the daytime to light a bathroom all the time. But, you know, there it is. Okay, we have a picture of wind turbine installation of Hadrite, and that is apparently how it's pronounced. I can tell you what it means. This is from Renews.
Yeah, so the headline here is NBW DHL Group Inc. Long-Term Wind PPA.
ENBW and logistics company DHL Group have signed a long-term power purchase agreement for energy from the Hadrite offshore wind farm. Hadrite means it spins.
Oh.
It is, you know, looking at that, I thought, that's got to be Dutch. No, it's not Dutch. It's Plattdeutsch. You don't know Plattdeutsch? That's what my grandfather's family spoke when he was born. Plattdeutsch is German, but it's a dialect of German spoken only in the plain areas of northern Germany, which is why it's called Plattdeutsch. Platt means plain. Mm-hmm. It will have an installed capacity of 960 megawatts, 20 megawatts of which will go to supply DHL Group. So there it goes. We're seeing, you know, when I started this show, we'd see renewable energy farms, wind farms, solar farms, whatever, going in, and we would be awestruck by the fact that they would be 20 megawatts. This thing's almost a gigawatt. And I see things come in that are huge compared to this.
Yeah.
Okay, we are at a point where we can talk about the Viking Line electric ferry boat Helios. This is from Clean Technica.
So the headline here is Battery Ferries, Helios, China Zarilla, and BC Ferries compared.
Viking Line's recently announced fully electric ferry Helios represents one of the most ambitious maritime electrification projects to date and offers a powerful indicator of how quickly and fundamentally ferry travel is being transformed by battery electric propulsion. Ferry boats are ideal for getting electrified because you can take them to one end and plug them in, and then when they get filled, you can take them to the other end and plug them in. And, you know, that's what's happening. I think we reported on this a couple of months ago, almost 3/4 of new ferry boats, maybe it's more than 3/4, on order are electric. And that's what's happening. And this ferry boat, I believe this is the bow. Mm-hmm. And far end is the stern. Is that what it is? I don't know. But I've never been on a ferry boat that looked like that.
No.
Okay, we're up to Tuesday, June 17th, and we have a horrible picture of solar panels. Sorry, Soren H.
Sorry, Soren.
This is from Lazard.com, and everybody should know about Lazard.com because of this report, which comes out annually.
Okay, so that headline is Lazard releases 2025 LCOE plus report.
Lazard Incorporated announced the release of the 18th edition of its Levelized Cost of Energy Plus report, with insights into the cost competitiveness of various technologies for generating electricity. The report explores key aspects of energy generation, energy storage, and system-level considerations. This report shows that the cost of electricity from wind plus battery and solar plus battery in both cases has gone up considerably. However, so has everything else.
Yeah.
So wind plus batteries or solar plus batteries, in either case, they are the least expensive 24-hour energy sources that you can have. And it's just a matter of engineering to make sure that you've got enough electricity stored to make it 24/7. And of course, on a modern grid, a solar farm is not going to be there all by itself. It's going to have wind power from other places and other solar farms. So you can run a grid, and we will talk about this. I will get back to this. I think we should go on. We're still a little bit behind schedule. This is a picture of coastal Louisiana.
Yeah, so this is a headline from ABC News, and it's Supreme Court to hear appeal from Chevron in coastal damage lawsuits.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Chevron and other oil and gas companies are appealing a 2024 decision by a federal appeals court that kept the lawsuits seeking redress for coastal land loss and degradation of the environment in Louisiana in state courts. The state of Louisiana, the courts of the state ordered Chevron to pay $740 million. This is just for damages done in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And believe me, if you know the weekly problems, every other week you have Sunny Day Solar flooding Miami Beach and stuff like that. This is a problem that happens regularly, and the projections are that a bunch of cities are going to have to be abandoned because of the damage that Chevron and other companies have done.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've been watching since, I think since this show started, which was 12 years ago now. The thing that I've been watching is Cameron Parish, Louisiana. Cameron Parish is in the southwest corner of Louisiana. It's about as big as Windham and Bennington counties put together. It has a low population, 12,000, something like that, 10,000. But the population is similar to that of Brattleboro. The seat of Cameron Parish is the city of Cameron. And the latest I could find in terms of the population for Cameron was that it was pretty close to zero. The last one I saw was, I think, 2 years old, and it was 179 people or something like that. You see a picture of Cameron, it's just slabs that houses were built on. The houses are all gone. And the reason for this is, even though Cameron, when it was built, was 7 miles perhaps from the sea, it was 7 feet above sea level. And with the sea level rising and the land subsiding because the oil has been pumped out from under it, storms have come in and they have wiped out houses in Cameron, or flooded houses often enough that people just packed up and left. And so the seat of Cameron Parish is basically not even a community anymore. And it's not going to return. And thousands of square miles of Louisiana have been lost or are going to be lost. The state told people a long time ago, you're going to have to move out. This is the radical, socialist, democratic government of Louisiana.
Yeah.
What can I say? Yeah. All right. It's incredible damage that's being done. And the idea that Chevron should be able to get away with it is horrible. Okay.
Decades of behavior.
Yes, it's been they've been denying it for decades. They've been undermining the idea that they've been doing the damage that they've been doing for decades. An item from Clean Technica and bad artwork.
Yeah.
That came with the article. But it shows the problem.
The headline here is insurers shrink from covering damage due to subsidence and sinking buildings.
According to Bloomberg, subsidence is a slow-moving climate disaster that has caused tens of billions of dollars in damage already and could affect 1.2 billion people. It could lead to, and that's not 1.2 billion in the United States. That's 1.2 billion worldwide. There aren't 1.2 billion in the United States. It could lead to the loss of $8 trillion in economic output, and that's a lot of money for some people, for something people don't think about much. So the insurers are saying, we're not going to insure against that. And over again, they're just saying, we're not going to insure against that.
Yeah.
And they've been doing this for years. They've been doing it more and more. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's going to go. Years ago, when I was a member of the representative town meeting, I remember talking about this to the town meeting, this issue, insurance, and saying, I did a back of the envelope calculation and looking at insurance costs in the United States from, I'm going to say 1975 to 2017, but going over these years, which was 40 years, I would have expected insurance costs to go up due to inflation, increased land costs, increased population, which means increased buildings, and so forth and so forth. I would have expected the amount of money spent on flood insurance to go up by a factor of 5.5. It didn't. It went up by a factor of 47. There's a big difference between 5.5 and 47. I think that's statistically significant.
Yes.
Okay, we're up to Wednesday, June 18th. We have a picture of the United States Capitol building and an article from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so headline here is shocker. Senate Republicans look ready to kill clean energy and EV tax credits.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they really are ready to kill. They might be. Even as we learn about the harms of air pollution, water pollution, and global heating, Republican politicians have been opposed to any legislation that tries to limit fossil fuel use, including legislation that supports clean energy, energy efficiency, and electric vehicles. How do you deal with that? Come on, you're smart. you can. You wave your hands in the air and say, I don't know what, I can't understand how these people get elected to Congress when they're acting like that.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I would say that I wonder what they're for.
People in the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what they're for too. I think they're for
money.
Oil and gas.
Yeah.
That's what they're for.
Yeah.
They should be for the people of the United States who they were elected to represent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Our next item, we have a picture of oysters, somebody holding oysters.
Yeah, so this is from the BBC, and the headline here is Sharks and Oysters Set to Thrive in Warmer UK Waters.
The UK could see a boom in endangered sharks, rays, and native oysters as species change habitats to respond to rising ocean temperatures, according to scientists. Some creatures, such as a quahog, a clam that is the world's longest living animal, did you know that? I didn't either, could struggle to adapt. There are apparently quahogs that are 500 years old. Anyway, the waters are getting warmer, so sharks and oysters and things have to move. The oysters aren't going to move, they're just going to die. But their spawn settles down in places that are more suitable to them, that they would not have been able to grow in years ago when the water was too cold. Now the water's warm enough. I don't know how long that's going to go on. Maybe they're going to wind up growing at the North Pole at some point. I don't know. Anyway, this is something that apparently is happening. Okay, should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. Wind turbines. And this is from Renews.
Yeah, so the headline here is Multiple Factors Behind Iberian Grid Collapse.
The Spanish government concluded that April's unprecedented nationwide blackout was triggered by a cascade of failures in voltage control, oscillations in the system, and the premature disconnection of several power plants, and efforts to fix the problem inadvertently increased overall voltage. I've read several articles about this. I want to precede this by saying I read about this to read what some people put up on the news. You'd think this is the only time this has ever happened in history. I've been in a number of power failures. When I was at Pratt Institute in 1965 in November, there was a grid failure that covered the whole northeast of the United States and part of Canada. A couple of years later, there was a grid failure that didn't last anywhere near as long, but I remember it very well because I was driving from New Jersey to New York, Madison, New Jersey to Columbia University, and there were no streetlights. Everything was just shut down. And I was the only person apparently on the road who wanted to get from one place to another and was willing to put up with the fact that there were no streetlights. So I was able just to breeze into Manhattan. It was crazy. The power went out just as I was being handed the documents that I needed. The power came on just as I was handing the documents off to the person in Columbia. I have been on 4 occasions in outages that happened as a result of weather, 2 of them in Massachusetts, 2 of them in New Hampshire. 4 occasions that lasted longer than a week. Hurricane Bob was one of them. The perfect storm was another, and then there were there was a blizzard and an ice storm in New Hampshire. This kind of thing that happened in Spain happens without renewable energy being involved.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of things that happened. It looked like they had thought about things, but they never thought about what happens if everybody does the same thing at the same time. And they had a bunch of power plants that disconnected all at the same time. They had a bunch of other things that really, it was a bunch of things, but it was not renewable energy at fault. Okay. We have our last slide, which says, have a sweetly scented week. I enjoy these things.
Yes.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.